Hey, I heard you wanted more games to look forward to. I can help with that. Steam Next Fest happened, and I sampled games that you might want to keep an eye on. So, let's talk about those demos I played. Here we have GearGrit, a game that radiates PS2 platformer energy, which is intended, of course. The main inspiration is Jak 2, after all. I've known about this upcoming game for some time. In fact, I've playtested GearGrit before the public demo. See, my old file is still here too. And the difference between what I played then and now is night and day. Both movement and combat is satisfying to do well. The combat itself is on the simpler side, but there is a combo system. You get a normal 3-hitter, an uppercut which you can combo into a drop kick or a ninja kick, the ability to use 2 guns, and a special attack that you can work with. If anyone is too far for you to punch or kick, you have movement options, and let me tell you, the movement is sick. For vertical heights, you have a double jump and a spin that you can do in the air, so that's 3 you can do in total. There's also a crouch jump. For horizontal movements, you can roll into a jump, which will put you at running speed, which is faster than normal. Then there's the ninja kick that can help you get both vertical height and horizontal movements. Needless to say, GearGrit lets you schmoove. I mean, using the movement options on the streets of GearGrit for no reason makes me feel some type of way. This isn't including the fact that you can use vehicles, from cars to an air bike that's called the Pocket Rocket. Even the combat hits the neurons in just the right way. The addition of exploding flamingos was a good one too. I don't know why you specifically chose exploding flamingos, but I guess you could also ask why not exploding flamingos. I talked about the gameplay a bunch, but let's not forget about the presentation. I like the voice actor for the main character.
You kidding me?
And I love the design too. The UI has personality as well, and of course, those graphics are perfect. Can the game even improve from here? Well, of course it can. For the combat, the hit stun gets a bit weird. Enemies get stuck in the air for a bit and then fall. And lastly, for the platforming, many times I tried using the ninja kick on every wall I could, but you can't. I understand why that's the case, but if you're going to use black and yellow to indicate where you can do the ninja kick, that's a good start, but I think you could do a lot more. Maybe you can have graffiti on the walls that you can use that move on. It doesn't have to be graffiti, that's just the thing I saw the most of. You can also use posters that primarily feature black and yellow on them. That will also tell the player that they can ninja kick on the wall to get extra height. It is possible you have other ideas in store for GearGrit, so let me stop there, but I will say it might be worth keeping those things in mind. Burning Sword Death Sun will be an action game that mixes hack and slash and elements from Sekiro that's being created by Nomadic Games. Because the hack and slash genre is my favorite, I'm always down to play a new one, even if it is in its early stages. The core of the gameplay revolves around breaking the poise of the enemies to drain their life. Group fights happen more often than not, with 1v1s only being held at the end of the demo. I liked how you can reset your combos with a fast projectile. I would do this to keep pressure so I could break their poise faster. However, I will say, I know this game is in the alpha stages, so I know this game has a lot to work on. I'll split this game's critiques into sections: communication and balancing. Let's start with the former. When trying to perform the Burning Strike combo, I thought it was bugged because I couldn't activate it all the time, and that's with following the directions. I figured out how to do it when I pressed the button just as the attack lands, so it's a just frame window. The directions to execute this combo should indicate that exactly. You don't have to use the term just frame because other people may not know what that means, but you could say use precision strike just as the light attack lands, or something close to that. It's not just the tutorial text, but also on the battlefield too. The enemies will do a color-coded move. All red moves have to be dodged, and the golden moves can be parried, but you can choose to dodge if you want. Sometimes I find it hard to see with the camera and lock-on system. Funny enough, the way the camera works on the guys that throw bombs, that could be a good start. Use that camera and zoom out a bit. use that for everybody. Without that, I have to round up all the enemies so I can see them on the screen all at once. Now, on to the balancing. Shadow Storm and the Ice move are way stronger than the other options. For the basic combo structure, using Shadow Storm seems ideal for both group and 1v1 fights. I mean, when you think about it, I hit everyone in that general area, I can't get hit during that move, and not to mention, I can use that move free of charge. The other option is a charge attack that uses the fire gauge, which is a cool move, but I don't like using in group fights. You could freeze everybody in the general vicinity before using it, but if I'm not doing that combo finisher, I am just throwing the projectile or freezing the enemy. Speaking of freezing enemies, the special moves use the resource, and the other move that you have, which is the fire one, is meant to break shields. I could use it for other things, but I would rather not. The crowd control is too important here. Basically, all I want is a reason to use the other moves. Because as it stands right now, Shadow Storm and the Ice special are just too good. I know you all intend to add more attacks, so I'll leave you all with this. I think it's cool that you're dipping into the wuxia style, but maybe you can dip into it more with allowing us to even combo with the float that we can do. I know we use it for platforming purposes, but giving it a combat purpose would be awesome too. I can't wait to see what more you do with Burning Sword Death Sun. God, that title's a mouthful. Haneda Girl will be a cyberpunk action platformer being made by Studio Koba, a dev team I'm pretty familiar with because I've played their first game, Narita Boy. I'll admit, seeing the way this game plays surprised me because I played the first game, but I figured that's alright. The objective of Haneda Girl is to get through each level while assassinating enemies. You could do this in any way you want, just don't get shot. Some methods will give you more points than others. You have a stealth option, but you'll get less points for using it. You also have a mech too, but don't break it because then you will also get a point deduction. If the basic setup for this gameplay looks familiar to you, that's because it's pretty close to Katana Zero. Now personally, I'm not the one to enjoy games that require too much precision, but I did find myself going for platinum ranks, even if I told myself just to go for the gold. At least as far as the levels I tried, the difficulty was balanced well enough where going for the platinum rank is hard, but not impossible. You don't have to master the level. With the controls feeling good and the visuals being vibrant, especially with the retro futurism look, I find myself not having too many problems with the gameplay or presentation. Although I will say, my issues lie with the text and clarity. Grammar checking needs to be a priority because I see a lot of grammar errors. So the fix here is simple, just reread and correct those errors. The other being clarity, which is a bit tricky. There's a specific mechanic in this game where you jump on the back of the enemy mechs, and then one-shot them. In order to do this properly, you need to time the attack. The meter is gray, which makes it hard to see on some of the backgrounds. My solution here involves zooming in just a little bit, and making the bar stand out from the background just a tad as well. Slowing down time could help a bit, but that might be too many effects going on at once. Whatever you go with, I just hope something happens. Beyond that, Studio Koba is 100% on their way to making this game awesome. Ghost Hand will be a metroidvania with a Soviet flair to its fantasy setting, all being made by Hand Productions. The main inspiration for this game are Owlboy, Klonoa, Symphony of the Night, the Ori games, and Drakengard. I had interest in Ghost Hand because of the art style and the goofy way the main character runs. I can't get over it. When I finally got to play Ghost Hand, I found the demo to be pretty buggy. A lot of weird things kept happening with the audio, and the second boss could not spawn. When that happened to me, I was pretty sad about it, but when the demo was working properly, Ghost Hand was a fairly relaxing experience with its visuals and music. The main character herself is extremely expressive with everything she does. I love it. The day-night cycle looks great too. With that said, while playing the demo, I found the presentation to be the highlight. The gameplay revolves around the ghost hands, go figure. And for movement, momentum is heavily involved. Going up and down the hill will make you lose and gain speed respectively. There's also rail grinding and wall jumping. With the ghost hands you can punch, grab, and throw enemies, parry, and use a large ghost flail. The gameplay also features dragon riding, because you know, the Drakengard inspiration. While again, I did find it fun when it wasn't buggy, I'm just sad the jank happened at all. Let me talk about the momentum for a little bit. When I have to work with the momentum for a challenge, it gets rough. I would say it would be a good idea to tighten up on the momentum mechanic because of how important it is to the game. Yes, fixing all the bugs is important too, but so is getting that momentum right. Once that's done, I would say you are on your way to making a super unique Metroidvania, so keep it up. Yasha! Legends of the Demon Blade will be an action roguelike created by 7Quark. The inspiration for this game seems to just be the Edo period rather than another game. At the start, you get to pick from 3 characters. All 3 play differently too. Universally, all 3 characters have light attacks, heavy attacks, a dash attack, and a counter that can be charged. The dash also has a meter, so you cannot spam it. Shigure switches between swords and combat. Sarah uses twin blades, and can have 2 different types to have 2 different effects. And Taketora uses a bow and he punches people. From a combat perspective, I loved playing Sarah. If I ended up getting the game, I would probably play her first, because of how much I enjoyed playing fast with her. Shigure was actually my least favorite to play, but I found her story to be interesting. But that does take me to my personal gripe with the demo. Remember, for Sarah, I said from a combat perspective, I found her fun. I found her story to be, annoying and off-putting. I did find her interactions with the other demons to be interesting, but Shigure, the box art girl, was completely incompetent even though she has swords. Now I only have a sample of the story, though I hope there's a reason for why the character acts the way she does. Because in Shigure's own story, she can fight and take care of herself. All I'm saying is Shigure better not be like this forever. Out of everything on my list, Yasha is the most polished demo, and it has the release date, slated for April 23rd, 2025, so it makes sense. That being said, I am happy I didn't come across any major bugs. For an honorable mention, I would like to talk about Angeline Era for a moment. This game takes inspiration from the old Ys titles, so the method of attacking is aggressively bumping into enemies. And in general, that's how you interact with the world. As he says, bump the world. I played the demo for this game a while ago on my free time, and the current version doesn't have any new content, but only fixes, which is fine. Polishing the content that you already have is important as well. But at the time, I already thought the demo was clean already. I had no issues with it then, nor do I have any issues with it now. I enjoyed the fascinating world it has, or at least what's shown so far. The bosses, the music, everything about it was just amazing. That said, I at least want to dedicate some time to let you all know that this game exists. These are the same developers that made Anodyne 1 and 2. So if you need an awesome low-poly game where you bump into enemies, you know where to look. And now we have Pale Abyss. This one will be a dungeon crawling RPG by Permanent Crab Studios. And I must confess, this one isn't a part of the Steam Next Fest, but rather came out around about the time other developers released their demos early. I didn't hear it until 24 hours before the demo release from the Verho dev. But that's fine, I love surprises. Another low poly dungeon crawler? Sign me up. Pale Abyss from a graphic standpoint is great, and the music for this is amazing. But the UI is, extremely bare bones. I do know that the way this looks is a placeholder. I only recommend having the influence meter paired with the HP, stamina, and sanity meters, but that's not required. What Pale Abyss has for gameplay is a good start. Melee combat is simple, with it being slower pace. You can do a basic attack and a charge attack. Defense only has blocking, parrying, and I guess strafing too. Which, by the way, strafing is the strongest out of the three options given how the enemies function. The more interesting part of the gameplay revolves around the otherworldly influence and sanity. When you use magic, it will fill the sanity meter. When it maxes out, you will fill a little bit of that meter. Monsters are aligned with one or the other, so the opposite will be their weakness. Weapons in Pale Abyss all scale by strength, all spells scale by wisdom, but everything scales with abyssal or occult, which is a part of the otherworldly influence. If you have the meter on either side max out, you'll get the debuff Eldritch Madness. In this state, your max HP will drain slowly, but constantly. Even when you leave this state, your max HP will stay where it is until you rest. That said, with how slow that max HP drains, I see this being more of a benefit as long as you take everything out in time. With magic, you will do a lot of damage to the lobsters, and they can't do anything about it. The skeleton's ranged attacks are easy to dodge too. On my initial playthrough of the demo, as a melee character mind you, I found it easy to manage the meter as well. If I had too much abyssal, I could just go in the occult bath. Weird to say, but that's what it looked like to me. And if I had too much occult, I could use an altar to cleanse it. Plus, there are crystals you can eat that remove some of the influence. So if you want to hinge the game's challenge on managing that meter, consider making it harder for the player to control. I can see the potential in a gameplay element like this causing the player to have tense moments, with them desperately trying to manage the abyssal or occult influence. You all need to make sure that more spells, weapons, and other gimmicks affect the meter going up and down. Spells themselves are so strong that I can use them on a non-magic character because of how influence works. I think making the otherworldly influence a double-edged sword with a slight lean towards the negative for the player. Sure, the player can have the damage, but the max HP drains a bit quicker. Maybe the stamina can be affected where running and melee attacks cost a little bit more to use. You might not want to have those specific consequences, but I only want the mechanic being experimented with more. As it is now, the player can become a god pretty quick. Fortunately, from what I've seen, one of the developers has asked for feedback from others and taking it well, so I can only see Pale Abyss improving, like Hark the Ghoul and Verho. And like those games, I need to keep an eye on this one too. And that's all I played during the 2025 Winter Steam Next Fest. While all these games might be in different stages of development, I see promise in all of them. If you find any of these games interesting, I highly recommend putting them on your wish list. But anyway, that's it from me. I'll see you in the next one.